This is quite interesting because if you look at who has already announced that they're not going to support the government, it's quite an interesting mix of people who would be described on the left of the Conservative Party, but also many from the right as well.
That's right, and including people like me, who in the first instance weren't in favour of going to 0.7% because they thought it would create huge inefficiencies, which we think it did. But now, of course, coming back from it, it means children will die, and I think that will unify all sorts of people right across the party. In fact, listening to you in your previous conversation, I was sitting here thinking actually the Tory party is a coalition of 8 parties, and all of them are represented in our rebellion. There we are.
Yes. But what do you say to people who? I mean, we're going to be talking about this after 8 in a phone-in, and I suspect I'm going to get quite a lot of people ringing in saying, "Well, we've got to think of people in this country first. There's all this row about the lack of money going into post-COVID education recovery compared to what other countries are spending. Shouldn't we be spending that money here?" That's presumably what Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak think.
Well, that was, I think, the original opposition to 0.7 in the first place. But there's a difference. You see, what we're now talking about is cancelling programs that we set up. And that will actually lead to children dying. It's not a hyperbole. It's going to lead to tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands. You've got Yemen in terrible trouble, what with this war, but also its desperate poverty and children dying there. You've now got Sudan on the television the other day, another massive problem, and I think the prospect of large numbers of children dying from lack of water or poor hygiene, large numbers of girls not going to school, serious, very, very serious issues that make our problems, I mean, right enough, well, there are things we've got to find money for in this country. But by comparison, I don't think many people who said we want to put ourselves first would do so at the cost of tens of thousands of children's lives. And that's what we're talking about here.
Do you think that the rebellion stands a chance of success? Because there's a majority of 81, I think, now. So you're not far off getting enough MPs together to bring them down.
I think we probably will. I mean, there will obviously be a battle between now and Monday with the Whip's office trying to peel people off. But the simple truth is, one of the indicators of the fact we're likely to be successful is that the government has never dared put this policy to the House of Commons. It would have been a different issue if they'd come to the House of Commons and said, look, we promised 0.7 in our manifesto, as you pointed out, but circumstances are so different now that we're going to bring it to the House. After all, what's the other circumstance in which a policy leads to tens of thousands of lives being lost? A war. You wouldn't have a war of that magnitude without coming to the House of Commons. Why should you have this amount of damage being done to young people's lives without coming to the House of Commons? The fact that they didn't means they were not sure at all that they would win. In fact, we've had to find a very ingenious mechanism. I won't bore your audience with it, but a very ingenious mechanism under a different bill on Monday in order to get a vote in the House. So I think it's quite likely, more than quite likely, I think, actually, that we'll win. I mean, a number of people, Andrew Mitchell and others, have put in a huge amount of effort to persuade people, and they've been very successful. And as you said, it's a surprising range of people, but it's because they're all horrified by the consequence of the current policy.